The 10% tariffs will take effect September 1st and cover the $300 billion in Chinese imports not already taxed by Washington. The news sent shivers through the markets Thursday. The Dow racing a rebound of more than 300 points to end down 280 points. The Nasdaq slid 64. Meantime, more trade tensions in Asia. South Korea reacting to Japan's decision to remove it from the list of nations with preferred trade status, Seoul vowing a stern response. And stirring the Asia pod even more, South Korea says the North fired what appeared to be short-range missiles into the sea twice on Friday. This is Fox News.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. Our office is currently visiting our villages, providing contact information for our office and taking any inquiries we may be of service with. All vehicles and staff are appropriately identified for your safety. Please feel free to let our constituent outreach team know how we can be of service to you, and thank you for your kindness.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the Office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Calaguan Hafa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mezcla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
The 22-year-old granddaughter of Robert F. Kennedy dies. Police tell Boston 25 that methadone was found next to the body of Saoirse Kennedy Hill at the family compound in Hyannisport, Massachusetts on Thursday. Congress is off for its 5-week August recess. Fox's Sean Langell takes a look at what lawmakers accomplished before leaving town.
The Senate passing a 2-year budget deal that suspends the debt ceiling for 2 years while increasing military and domestic spending just before leaving for a 5-week break. 13 of President Trump's judicial nominees criticized by Democrats for being, quote, bigoted and narrow-minded were also confirmed. But GOP Senator Mike Lee tells Fox's Shannon Bream the criticism is
wrong. This is not fair to the president or those he has nominated.
And during a rally in Cincinnati Thursday, President Trump said he expects his total number of judges confirmed to climb to 179 within the next 2 months.
A judge sentences a Michigan man convicted of poisoning his wife's coffee.
Therese Kozlowski suddenly began feeling sick after filing for divorce last year. Symptoms included fatigue and blurred vision. She became suspicious her husband was up to something, and she installed a hidden camera in the kitchen of their home. Macomb County prosecutor Eric Smith says turns out Brian Kozlowski was putting an antihistamine in her coffee.
We're talking about diphenhydramine, which is the chemical form of sleeping pills. At one point, he puts water in it, puts it in the microwave to heat it up.
Smith calls Kozlowski's behavior despicable. He pleaded guilty but was sentenced to only 60 days in jail on weekends. Smith says guidelines called for up to 3 years behind bars. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
And competition for theme park tourists heats up in Florida. Universal Orlando announces it's adding a park called Epic Universe. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Parents, start your child's school year right with healthiness and fun. Complete your child's immunizations, annual physical, dental, or eye exam at FHP and receive a free gift for each exam visit. Perfect for back to school. Valid from July 15 to August 31st or while supplies last. Visit their website or Facebook page for more details. Call 646-5825 and press 2 to schedule an appointment today. Most private insurance accepted. FHP Health Center, our island, your clinic.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. The only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's one of the things we stand for here on Tall Tales. When I say we, I'm referring to myself, of course, and to our double-hitter pitching producer, Michael Knight, who has been up since 30, getting the truth out on the airwaves.
Yeah, the chickens wait for me to get up before they start crowing.
Yeah, so I heard about a couple roosters kind of clucking sotto voce, saying, "I think Mike's up. I think we better start the cockle-doodle-doo routine."
That's when they start.
Yeah.
But not until I get up.
Exactly. So Michael's filling in here for the legendary Real Joe Cruz. So all of those of you out there who have helped establish the Real Joe Cruz personality cult, the Real Joe Cruz will be back. And until he comes back, Michael will be filling in as a producer here for Tall Tales.
It should be noted that the Real Joe Cruz should not be confused with the Unreal Joe Cruz.
Well, the other Joe Cruz.
Right,
yeah. Just the kind of the airsats Joe Cruz.
Always imitated, never duplicated.
Exactly. Okay, so today is the last day to pursue the article or the piece that I pulled out of WAPO dealing with the gun control debate, and it said the gun control debate can be explained in 5 questions. And I've gone through the other questions a couple of times already. I'll just reread question number 4. And number 4 says, is prohibiting gun ownership compatible with the Second Amendment? And, of course, I suspect this was a cause for side-splitting laughter out there in our international radio listening audience. Probably people were mumbling things like, is the Pope Catholic?
Yeah, does a bear poop in the woods?
Is it cold at the South Pole? Yeah, stuff like that. Then the very last question here is, do Americans even want more gun control? And here's the write-up here. Pam Bosley, as you were, pro-gun rights. Not really. When Quinnipiac University asked Americans that question in September, more people said they oppose stricter gun laws than support them, including independents. In fact, for the past decades, Americans have been shifting towards viewing guns as the answer to gun violence. And I have to interject here what we would call the good guy with the gun. Viewing guns as the answer to gun violence, not the problem. After a 2014 Pew Research Center survey marked the first time in 2 decades that more Americans supported the concept of gun rights than gun control. An August Pew survey found public opinion narrowly split, but much closer than it had been for decades. Americans are also showing their support for keeping our gun laws the way they are at the voting booth. When a 2013 vote in the Senate to expand background checks failed, voters congratulated Republicans who opposed background checks by ushering one of the party's largest congressional majorities since the Great Depression. So at least this part of the article suggests that gun rights are becoming sort of the majority opinion amongst Americans. And, of course, we always have problems determining causality. Is it causality or coincidence? But does the fact that I've started out every episode of Tall Tales for the last couple years with a reading of the Second Amendment, I would suspect that this has caused something of a shift in popular opinion.
I would say so.
Yeah, certainly among all of our listeners out there in our international radio listening audience. Now, here's the pro-gun control take. Yeah, but.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
Yeah, but. Yeah, but you break down specific gun control policies, Americans are actually in favor of a few key ones, sometimes with overwhelming majorities. Even though it failed in the Senate, making everyone who buys a gun go through a background check has steadily been supported by 80 to 90% of Americans. It even gets high marks among members of the National Rifle Association. Support for banning assault weapons and large capacity magazines also polls well, regularly in the 60 to 70% range. With numbers like that, there's no reason we can't pass common sense gun control reform that many Americans agree with will make us safer. Well, common sense, there we go. Now, most of the pro-gun control folks are over there on the left. They belong to the Democrat Party, and I suppose it's possible to find folks in the Democrat Party that have some common sense. I don't know. I got to think about that one.
That might be a reach.
Yeah, I might be kind of a stretch there, kind of a reach. Yeah, but anyhow, that's the Yabut position. So when somebody starts out his rejoinder to the position that you state, and the response comes back as, well, yeah, but that probably means that you've got the superior argument, and the other person is scrambling around to try to say something to counter what you're talking about.
Yeah, because if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, you baffle them with
right
other stuff.
Something else that starts with a B, right? Sure enough. Okay, well, let's go from there straight to Zemi Ikotny. I understand that there may be folks down there at the Pacific Daily News headquarters that are not, so excited about gun control. What they're looking for is blue pencil control. We shouldn't let just any old talk show host have access to a blue pencil and award blue stars unless, maybe if that person were working for Gannett, it might be okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of level the playing field a little bit. Okay, well, today's Daily News so-called editorial. Yesterday, the Daily News actually had a real editorial, and Wonder of Wonders got a blue star. It was one of those red-letter days when both papers got blue stars.
Yeah, I think the folks at the Daily News actually bought each other coffee in celebration of the event.
Well, I was wondering, I'm something of a conspiracy theorist. Mm-hmm. You suppose they kind of put their heads together and cook something up together on that editorial so that each of them could win the coveted blue star?
You got to wonder.
Yeah.
It's very fortuitous that they would, approach the same subject as the other guys on the same day.
Could have been. I'll just chalk it up to coincidence for now, but I'm a little suspicious. Well, today, here's the Daily News. They've already written their one editorial for this week. Here's the key sentence. With natural gas, drill, baby, drill, turns to burn, baby, burn. As Europe bakes, wildfires burn in the Arctic Circle, and July is shaping up to be the Earth's hottest month since record-breaking began in 1880. Americans are becoming more keenly aware of global warming. Now, you can pretty much figure out where the rest of this is going to go, right? Yeah. And I suspect that the obligatory Trump bashing is part of it. So as far as global warming is concerned, I think here's the word. Temperatures are rising.
Yes.
And I would ask the legendary Duke Skytalker to back me up on this. Mm-hmm. But weather has never been static, has it, Duke?
No, it's not. You know, and there are two sides of the argument for global warming or climate change is what I prefer to call it. And part of it is that it's a cyclical thing, and we just happen to be here during one of these warm cycles. Other people will say, well, no, it's not, and I agree with that to some degree as well. I mean, there are more people on the planet now than there ever have been, and there are things happening that have never happened before in recorded history. So we have to give that some weight. But the combination of the two is clearly leading us into a direction where the Earth is warming, and I don't think it matters why. I think we just need to try to figure out how to adjust to it.
Well, I do think it matters why. Or excuse me, let me chime in here. Yeah, what?
Yeah. You're allowed. It's after all, it's Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie.
Absolutely. So, if it is part of a natural phenomenon, you know, you don't have to go back in history too far to dredge up stories about the little ice age.
That's right.
And how the Earth has warmed since the end of the Little Ice Age, and all of the calamities that occurred during the Little Ice Age. So weather has fluctuated. That's why there's a difference between weather and climate.
That's right.
And climate has changed. You know, at one time, you know, you wonder why lions are so popular in European heraldry. It's because at one time lions were ranged all the way up to the coast of the Mediterranean,
right?
Which is now the Sahara Desert. Or excuse me, the Sahara.
Well, and the Sahara was underwater at one point in time. They've got proof of that. So
this is what I see as the dangerous part of the whole global warming, climate change, whatever you want to call it. There is an element in our society of a political stripe that is saying the reason that climate is changing is because of the things that people do, and we've got to stop people from doing those things.
Right.
Otherwise, we're all going to suffer. And in order to stop people from doing those things, the government is going to need more and more control.
Yeah, okay.
Witness the Green Revolution,
right,
brought to us by a member of the squad. So I guess if it really were the case that we're dealing with global warming and that water, you know, that the oceans are going to rise, etc., then maybe we should do something about it. Maybe we should stop insuring people who live in barrier islands.
Yeah.
Maybe no more building permits in Manhattan.
Right.
Those kinds of things. Not everybody, no more, you can't burn any more gasoline. You've got to take your automobile to the dump and have it recycled into something more useful, etc. So, but anyhow, here's classic daily news, of course, you know, global warming, the sky is falling. You've got to give the central government more power to deal with it. Okay, so from there, and of course the Daily News ran a Gannett editorial instead of doing their own. So then we come to the Post. And the Post editorial is, once again, it's a good one. Supreme Court ruling on fired unqualified accountant leaves unanswered questions. Years before Kevin Suswiku became mayor of Agate, he was fired for the job of accountant 2 at the Port Authority of Guam. A little more than a year into the job, he was fired. It turned out he wasn't qualified, the Civil Service Commission had ruled. The job, among other qualifications, according to the Port Authority's posting for the position, required a bachelor's degree in accounting or a related field, including or supplemented by 24 semester credit hours of accounting subjects. An applicant could also present prior Accountant 1 experience or equivalent work in a possession of a certificate as a certified public accountant. The Port Authority's requirements for the job state. Suswiku, according to public records, did not have an accounting degree. Without that degree, it would have been impossible for him to even take the board exam to be licensed as a certified public accountant. He did obtain a 2-year associate's degree in marketing from Guam Community College, which didn't quite fit the requirements for the job he was fired from, but sought to regain by fighting his case all the way to the Supreme Court, including years of back pay. The Supreme Court ruling acknowledges that Suswiku wasn't qualified to be an accountant at the port, but it still agreed with the Superior Court that Suswiku should be awarded years of back pay for a job he shouldn't have been hired for in the first place. I think the Supreme Court may have supported a well-known case called Catch-22.
Did they?
Yeah. The Supreme Court acknowledges that Suswiku wasn't qualified, but still agreed with the Superior Court. The courts chose to look at a technical fault in the government process leading up to the January 2013 termination. After he was hired as an accountant in 2011, the government supposedly missed a 60-day deadline to inform Suswiku of the adverse action against him, hence the award of back pay and reinstatement. The port is looking at an enormous cost. Years of back pay plus interest could add up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Suswiku hasn't responded to the Daily Post's request for comment, but it would be safe to say he wants the payday, although not necessarily to go back to the job he isn't qualified to perform. A marketing graduate cannot just swing on a job that requires an accounting degree and a CPA license. The Superior and Supreme Court decisions leave more questions than answers. Why would courts side with a person who wants back pay and reinstatement for a position he shouldn't have held to begin with? In this case, the High Court took a 180-degree turn from its recent YTK decision, etc. The Suswiku case is puzzling. Just because the Superior Court issued a ruling doesn't mean the issue goes away. More scrutiny, more answers are needed. The Office of the Attorney General needs to look at Suswiku's job application and determine whether he purposely claimed to be an accountant, etc. Well, I remember when this case came down, and it's listed in the card. It was listed in yesterday's card. I didn't get to it, but it was shown in the card as the Civil Service Commission versus Suswiku. And here's the reason why. I've got a couple excerpts from the Supreme Court decision. On page 3, it says, at a post-audit hearing conducted by the Civil Service Commission, the port did not contest factual findings reported in the post-audit investigation report regarding Suswiku's lack of requisite qualifications. The port was given 90 days to present a mediation plan. Okay, and then there's on page 7, the port knew or should have known about Suswiku's lack of educational qualifications, which indicated that his appointment as an accountant who violated the port's rules no later than October 16, when the post-audit hearing was held, and the port did not contest the CSC's factual finding. Now, let me see if I can decipher some of these things for you here. This is, even if it weren't as bizarre as it is, it's a little complicated. And here's why it's complicated. If you were to look at 4 GCA 4406, parenthesis small d, you'll find this language. The commission, meaning the Civil Service Commission, may investigate and set aside and declare null and void any personnel action of an employee in the classified service if the commission finds, after conducting the necessary investigation, that the personnel action was taken in violation of personnel laws or rules. And that's exactly what happened. The Civil Service Commission, as I read from the Supreme Court decision, the Civil Service Commission conducted an investigation, and they found that Suswiku should not have been hired because he wasn't qualified. They made that finding. And then, according to the Supreme Court decision, this is what happened next. That the port was given 90 days to present a remediation plan. Now, what are they going to do? Cram Suswiku's head full of the kind of knowledge that it would take for him to pass a CPA exam? Give him a head transplant? I mean, the Civil Service Commission had the ability at that time to say you never should have had, you weren't qualified for that job. Not you're fired, but your appointment is voided. So long, kid. Don't let the door hit you in the, you know what, on the way out. Yeah. That's what they should have done. But the Civil Service Commission said, we'll give you 60 days to come up with a remediation plan. And that's where this whole thing went south. So if the Civil Service Commission had done what it was supposed to have done, that would have been the end of it. And I'm not going to let the Supreme Court off either, because the Supreme Court should have gone through the same thought process that I went through. And that is that, that Suswiku could not have had the job because he didn't meet the qualifications. Not having had the job, he's not entitled to the Civil Service Commission protections that a classified employee gets, someone who is an employee in good standing. So he wouldn't have the ability to say, well, the 60-day rule was violated, because there wouldn't be any 60-day rule any more than, God forbid, that if either one of us got his walking papers, we could go to the Civil Service Commission and say, oh, Ray didn't tell us within 60 days. You got to give us our job back. That really takes a lot of imagination.
Yeah, that won't work.
Yeah. But that's what happened here. So this, I've never been a fan of the Civil Service Commission, and I've never been a fan of this, what they refer to as their post-audit authority. And this is a classic example of why. Instead of doing what they could do and what they should have done, they wanted to play nice. Well, we'll give you 60 days to come up with a remediation plan. Kind of like maybe you could give them a job somewhere else, or maybe you could give them a separation bonus, or, you know, determine whether or not he's a nice guy, and if he is, let him keep the job, something like that. Instead of just saying he wasn't qualified, he should not have been hired, Port, you screwed up, you ought to conduct an investigation into your HR department and find out how that guy got hired in the first place, and that appointment is void. It should have never happened. That's not what happened. So here's another job for our Ethics Commission. I think that takes the total up to 5 for the Ethics Commission to find out what happened here, because this is going to cost us big bucks. Back to 2012, that's seven years of back pay for that guy. And then, of course, the way the Civil Service Commission mechanism works is that if an employee prevails on an adverse action, he's reinstated to the position that he was wrongfully terminated from, and then he's given back pay for that position. Well, the Port, even if they wanted to, can't reinstate Suswiku because he's not qualified for the position.
Yeah, we should all just go get a job for Gov Guam and then get fired.
Yeah.
Because then, you know, cha-ching.
It's a real career move, that's for sure. Just like this plumber, you know, that is going to get this huge back pay award. Okay, so, and once again, the Post is out there looking around, finding stuff that needs to be looked into, coming out and making good hard calls, not trying to soften it up or anything like that, but calling it as it is. Well, the Daily News has probably preparing its change of name petition to change its name to Gannett Daily News instead of Guam. So therefore, we give the coveted Blue Star once again to the Guam Post. Let's give them a big round of applause, Michael. Yeah, let's see now. My hearing's a little off. I don't know if I'm listening to Take 5 or Rock Around the... I guess it's Rock Around the Clock.
Yes, for you,
Yeah.
It's Rock Around the Clock.
Thank you.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. Our office is currently visiting our villages, providing contact information for our office and taking any inquiries we may be of service with. All vehicles and staff are appropriately identified for your safety. Please feel free to let our constituent outreach team know how we can be of service to you, and thank you for your kindness.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So that took one item off the card. We just covered it there in Deme Ikane because it was really quite appropriate. Just glancing out of the corner of my eye here during the break, and a couple of interesting posts, one of which is from Jose Martinez. Is the governor of Guam a woman?
Last I heard.
Yeah. And when was the last you heard?
That was this morning, Bob.
It's something you can't avoid hearing.
Right.
We hear it over and over again. So the answer is yes, but Richard V. Leon has a response to that. Richard V. Leon says, upgrade to Windows 10 Pro to eliminate all problems. So if you have a female governor, just upgrade to Windows 10 and you're all set.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so then the card. This is what I got on the card for today. I've got the squad reports. I've got the Ethics Commission versus Major General Agagi. That's a hot one. CCU versus Gura. Davis versus the status quo. The United States versus the Chamorro Land Trust Act. TINA versus GPD. Legislature versus transparency. And let's see, and Lou versus travel regs. And legislative transparency again. Okay, so let me start out here with the squad report. I've kind of committed myself to giving a squad report every day. And as far as the squad is concerned, I've got something here from Town Hall, and here's a headline. Well, new poll finds Trump far more popular than Pelosi and the squad.
Oh, yeah. Without question.
That's kind of damning. Trump.
I mean, even people that don't like Trump like him better than those guys.
Yeah, it's kind of damning Trump with faint praise, isn't it? Yeah, so there's some numbers here that Nancy Pelosi has a 28% favorable opinion, 46% unfavorable. Ocasio-Cortez, 30% favorable, 47% unfavorable. Tlaib has 26% favorable, 42% unfavorable. Omar, 25% favorable, 46% unfavorable. Presley at 24% favorable, 35% unfavorable. Among Democrats, let's see. I had a figure here for Trump somewhere. Yeah, as for President Trump, his job approval rating sits nearly perfectly even, 45% favorable, 46% unfavorable, which also tested hypothetical head-to-heads. So as far as the squad is concerned, I guess the only thing I could say is keep it up.
Yeah.
You probably ought to be listed in Trump's campaign finance report because you're probably doing his campaign as much good as anybody's actually part of the campaign. So much for that squad. And then we have our own squad. Our squad has been uncharacteristically quiet. It's very surprising because one would have thought that in the light of the Davis decision, there would have been all kinds of kvetching, self-righteous hand-wringing.
Yes, wailing, gnashing of teeth, tearing of robes even.
Exactly, yeah. And lots of woe is me.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I suppose timing is everything, so perhaps it'll come a little later on. Okay, so that's the squad report. Next thing I've got on the agenda here is the continuing story of Esther Agagi.
Yeah.
Who is the Major General in the Guam Guard. She's the Adjutant General of the Guam Guard, and she got a huge pay raise. It was announced a couple of days ago that she went all the way up to $122,907 from about $81,500.
That's a nice little increase.
Yeah, about a 50% salary increase. And when it first came out, people were somewhat shocked. And Janela Carrera, the governor's spokesman, said, well, yeah, the budget's there, money's there, and this was done to realign the adjutant general with other directors in the government of Guam. And notwithstanding the fact that she is a major general in the Guam Guard, she in the position of adjutant general, she is a territorial employee. She is the director of military affairs. So she's the director of that department, just as there is a director of labor, and the Burn is a director of administration, and so on. So she's an unclassified employee, and she went to the top of the scale in one swell foop, so to speak. But Janela said, well, the reason for that was because there was a desire to realign her salary with other directors. I think Rory's making more money than that. I think the Tom up at the airport's making more money than that. Something that the other governor, Leon Guerrero, rants about quite frequently. So people thought, this doesn't seem right to give somebody that big a jump for that reason. And so then Eagle Eye Kevin over at the Post digs in, and he is able to come up with a paper emanating from within the bowels of the government of Guam called a Request for Personnel Action, something that used to be called a GG1, but we don't need to get into that arcanity right now. So the way the government of Guam personnel system works is this, that if there is an employee in any one of the departments that is entitled to a salary increase, a raise, then a request for personnel action is prepared, signed by the director of that agency, forwarded to the Bureau of Budget and Management Research, and if the money is there to fund the salary increase, if there's an appropriation and money to accomplish the appropriation, then it's sent to the Director of Administration, who prepares a paper called a Notice of Personnel Action. And the Notice of Personnel Action then gets sent, like 7 copies, and it gets sent all over the government. And that's the pay document. So when the payroll section gets that notification of personnel action, the employee's check is increased pursuant to the notice of personnel action. But it all starts with the request for personnel action. Well, Kevin was able to obtain the personnel action here. I have it right here if you'd like to take a peek at it. Yeah, you probably can't see it very well. So I've seen a lot of these in my day, and I examined it, and here's what it shows. Here's what it shows. The personnel action, or the request, was requested by. Laura Lee T. Chrysostomo, the quartermaster of the Guard. Now, the quartermaster in the Guard is a civilian employee. Quartermaster is kind of like the chief of administration for the government of Guam side, not the military side, but the government of Guam side. So the quartermaster prepared this request for personnel action to give Esther this raise up to $122,000, and then it was signed for Lulian Guerrero, the governor of Guam, by guess who? Josh Tenorio, the lieutenant governor of Guam, acting in the stead of the governor.
Right.
So then it went to the Bureau of Budget and Management Research, and somebody signed off for Lester Carlson, who's the director. And the money, no doubt the money's there, the appropriation is there, etc. I have a feeling that had Lester seen this himself instead of being off island, he'd looked at this and said, oh, hey, wait a minute, I'm not signing this. I got to find out what's going on here, because this could be a real black eye for the governor or the lieutenant governor. So I got to make sure they know what the heck they're doing. Lester's pretty good about how the government of Guam operate, but he wasn't here. So it goes to the Department of Administration. Sure enough, it's a routine matter. They got the request. They prepared the notice. It was sent around, and no doubt Esther's salary increased dramatically on the first payday after this was effective on July 8th. So let's see, it would have been 14 days on July the 22nd. Esther's salary, Esther's paycheck would have seen a significant increase, which one would have thought she might have noticed.
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah, unless, well, I'll hold on to the unless for a minute. So then going back again, now Laura Lee Chrysostomo is the one that prepared the request. So is this what happened? Laura Lee is the quartermaster at the Guard. She answers to the adjutant general. Adjutant general's her boss. She's a regular classified government of Guam employee. So she puts on her thinking cap and she says, you know, I think Major General Agagi should have a raise. She should have a salary increase.
Wait. Hold on.
Yeah.
You mean to tell me the lady that gave her the raise actually works under the lady that got the raise?
Absolutely.
That makes absolutely no sense.
Well, one of two scenarios here. So Laura Lee says, yeah, Esther's really done a good job, and she's really nice to me, and, you know, she never, no matter what, she never scolds. So I think she ought to have a raise. So since I know how to prepare these requests for personnel actions, and it's part of my job, I'm going to prepare a request for personnel action and send it on down to BBMR and to the governor's office, because I really like Esther. That's scenario number one. Mm-hmm. Scenario number two, Laura Lee never prepares anything like this unless somebody tells her to do it. Scenario number two, the adjutant general says, Laura Lee, get out the forms for requests for personnel action and prepare one giving me the maximum salary as an unclassified employee in my grade, $122,000 plus dollars. And Laura Lee says, yes, sir, boss. Whatever you say, I'll do it. She does it. She signs it. She sends it down to Josh Tenorio, or to BBMR and then to Josh Tenorio. Mm-hmm. Which of those two scenarios sounds like the more logical, Michael?
Well, the second one sounds highly nefarious.
Yeah, but very logical.
Yeah. So I would hate to think it could be the second one, but clearly that's the one that makes the most sense, because, again, I have never in my days of being on this earth heard of somebody under another being able to give that person above them a pay raise.
Well, the way the system is set up, the person that prepares the paper has no discretion.
Right.
It's a purely ministerial duty.
Right.
If the director says, prepare the paper for my signature, and it's prepared.
So she could not have taken it upon herself to prepare this document.
Unless you've got a really good imagination. Yeah.
No, mine's not that good.
Mine isn't either. So it's very possible then, and Major General Agagi said, Laura Lee, prepare this paper for me. And then it goes to BBMR, goes on through, and it goes to Josh. I don't know if the governor was off island at the time, and if Josh was the acting governor, or if he was just the lieutenant governor.
Third scenario to stir your conspiratorial juices.
Yeah.
Maybe the governor left instructions before she left to have Ms. Chrysostomo prepare that document.
Well, and getting into it a little farther is something like this. When it's a director, you would think that a director would have bounced it off the front office before, before she went that far, before they went that farther into it. So it could very well have been that that Esther cleared this with Lou before, and Lou said, "Yeah, go ahead. We'll do it. You're good.
Okay.
You're good. We'll give you that raise." Or even more nefarious, perhaps Esther and Josh consulted, and Josh says, "Yeah, I can do that, but wait till the next time Lou's off island, and I'm the acting governor, and then we'll just slip it through, and probably nobody will notice." So it's really interesting to see what happened. Now there are supposed to be professional. Okay.
No, that's a conspiracy bed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's take a short break here, and I'll come back and unpack this a little bit more. We got time to finish this up before that big halftime show.
Shopping just got exciting. Join the Agania Shopping Center's Shop and Win on Weekdays promo. Shop or dine at any ASC store or restaurant on weekdays from now till October 31st. Show your receipt at the ASC booth and win instantly. Every $20 spent gets you an entry form to win big at the monthly draws, including round-trip tickets to Manila, $500 ASC gift certificates, and more. See posters and print ads for more. Special thanks to Sky Zone, Fundamental Writers, Vince Jewelers, and Wendy's.
Whether it's for business or pleasure, staying connected when you travel is always essential. And now when you travel to South Korea, enjoy free data roaming with Docomo Pacific. Navigate the city, look up the best restaurants, email back home, or post all your pictures, all on the go for free. Call 688-2677 today to make sure your postpaid account is ready for roaming. You plus Docomo Pacific. Better together. Some conditions apply. See print ad for details.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Lost my again. So coming back here, I noticed I got a phone call here from Mark, and Mark, I still got a little bit more to go on this, but I'm gonna interrupt myself here and give you your opportunity to make your mark once again. Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, good afternoon, Senator.
Yes, sir.
You know, one thing I want to hearken back to when all this started with the AG was the term inadvertent was used. And now seeing as this plays out, I have to agree it was inadvertent. It was inadvertent that anyone found out about it.
Yeah, I agree, Mark.
This was supposed to just fly under the radar. Nobody would say anything. It was all good. Oh, now it's coming out. Oh, it was inadvertent. And we've gone from this was a mistake because it was a proposal and what-if scenario to it was actually signed off by the lieutenant governor. So I really believe inadvertently it was found out about it. It was never to have found out. And now I find out that, as I understand the chain of command, if you want to say, or the hierarchy of leadership, the quartermaster works for the adjutant general.
Yes, he does.
How can somebody that is a subordinate prepare a pay increase for their boss?
Well, it's a ministerial duty. It's the quartermaster's job to prepare things for the tags for the director's signature. So the quartermaster is kind of like a company clerk. The company clerk doesn't have much power himself, but he does prepare things for the company commander. It's that kind of relationship.
Oh, I understand, but she then would be in line for potential, I'm trying to think, what term am I looking for? Good things to happen to her by the adjutant general.
Favoritism, is that what you're looking for, Mark?
Favoritism, whatever it is.
Well, I went through that scenario, first of all, the imaginary scenario where the quartermaster decided to do it on her own, and of course that didn't happen. The second scenario is that the adjutant general said, prepare a request for personnel action for me to give me a raise up to $122,000. And the quartermaster says, if that's what you want, that's my job, I'll do it.
And you're my boss. And somebody in her position, if scenario number 2 is the case, she should have been standing up and ethically saying, I can't do that. You are my boss.
Well,
that will not be proper for me to do.
But Mark, someone has to prepare the papers. So there's no problem.
Yeah, it should have been somebody above her, outside the National Guard.
Well,
outside the Department of Military Affairs.
Well, in a military organization, in order for orders to be cut, somebody has to prepare a request for orders, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and it's the same sort of a situation. The person who prepares the request for orders is not the person who signs off on it, not the person who signs the orders. It's the same sort of thing. So I don't see that there's anything unethical in what the quartermaster did, except perhaps the quartermaster should have said, I ain't signing this. You are the one who is requesting it. Sign it yourself, and put her employment at risk.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This one is, again, I go back to what I've told you before. I think they've got the wheel of misfortune at Adaloop that they spin about once a week to see which agency is going to be doing dumb stuff. And this week it's been spun to the National Guard to do dumb stuff.
Yeah. I agree. This one may get the Academy Award at the end of the year as far as dumb stuff is concerned, and it keeps getting dumber. There's more to it that I will spin out as we go along, Mark.
I can't wait to hear it.
Okay, well, thanks for calling up and making your mark.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so quartermaster. And the space on the form says requested by, and it says signature and title. It could have been Esther Agagi, Adjutant General. But I suppose a little bit better if she has somebody else sign it. It looks a little cleaner, doesn't it? So then it goes down to the lieutenant governor. Now, when this first became public, when it first broke, the story was, as I mentioned, Janela Carrera, the spokesman for the governor, said, oh, yeah, the appropriation was there. We did this to align the adjutant general's salary with the other directors in the government. Then the next day, the story changes, and it comes out like, Adelup says that the adjutant general's pay raise was a mistake and not sanctioned by the administration. And then it says, this pay adjustment was not sanctioned by the administration. This was an error in systems and processes. We have since corrected the adjutant general's salary and are making adjustments to ensure that necessary controls are in place. So it went from something like, yeah, we thought this was a good idea, so we did it. And the next day it was, hey, we made a mistake. Pardon us. Yeah. And as part of the confession of a mistake, Janela came out with this announcement. A subsequent statement issued to the media on July 31 regarding the salary adjustment was made in error. And here's a quote from Janela. My statement regarding General Aggie was made without accurate information. I take responsibility for this and apologize to the administration for the error, said the governor's communication director, Janela Carrera. And, of course, the next story that comes out is Kevin's story. Guard quartermaster requested Aggie pay raise. Lieutenant governor approved it. Now, there hasn't been another statement from Janela.
KUM actually released a story on Facebook earlier, and the administration officially has no more comment on the issue.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So there's been no further comment from Janela, and I suspect it's a logistical problem, and that is that Kevin has a microphone, and he has a microphone on a boom, but the boom is only about 3 feet long. And Janela is much farther under the bus than that. so she can't get to the microphone. But boy, you just got to wonder what goes through people's minds when they're doing this kind of stuff. You know,
it reminds me of something Dr. Underwood said on Ray's show this morning. There's so many people under the bus now, I'm wondering how it even rolls.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe that's why that school bus driver kicked the kids off the bus. Remember that one? So this just goes on and on and on. What culpability does Esther Aggie have in this? You know, there's still a little bit more on this, so I'm still not wringing everything out of this rag. So we'll come back to this after the big halftime show. So I'll be back in about 7 minutes.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Talk of more tariffs rattles world markets. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. U.S. and Asian stocks dive after President Trump says he's going to impose more tariffs on Chinese goods. He's blaming Beijing for not cooperating on trade talks this week.
We've taken the toughest ever action to stand up to China's trade abuse. And I just announced another 10% tariff on $300 billion worth of Chinese products that come into our country.
The president speaking at a campaign rally last night in Cincinnati, Ohio. China's foreign minister criticizing the president this morning, telling reporters tariffs are the wrong move to resolve trade frictions. News of the impending tariffs sent the Dow into a wild swing of more than 500 points yesterday. Blue chips went from being up more than 300 points to a 280-point loss. Stocks in Asia following suit. Japan's Nikkei fell 2% today. Hong Kong and China still trading, but also taking a hit. The family of Robert F. Kennedy's mourning the death of one of his granddaughters. 22-year-old Saoirse Hill was found dead yesterday at the family compound in Hyannisport, Massachusetts.
A police source tells Boston 25 the woman died of a suspected overdose. The Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office are investigating Hill's death.
Boston 25 reporter Julie Leonardi. Hill was the daughter of Robert and Ethel Kennedy's fifth child, Courtney, and her husband, Paul Michael Hill, who was one of the four falsely convicted in the 1974 Irish Republican Army bombing of two pubs. And a Philadelphia man who spent more than 2 decades behind bars for the murder he did not commit is a free man 17 years after another man confessed to the crime. John Miller was released Wednesday. His response felt surreal. This is Fox News.
Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Kelaguen Hapa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mescla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mescla, a true taste of Guam.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. Our office is currently visiting our villages, providing contact information for our office and taking any inquiries we may be of service with. All vehicles and staff are appropriately identified for your safety. Please feel free to let our constituent outreach team know how we can be of service to you, and thank you for your kindness.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
A Texas man is charged with helping ISIS.
A grand jury has indicted Omar Kuzu on one count of conspiring to support a foreign terrorist organization. Court documents say Kuzu and his brother left their home in the Dallas suburb of Plano in 2014, traveled to Turkey, and eventually crossed the border into Syria to join ISIS. He was captured by Syrian forces earlier this year and has been transferred to FBI custody. Kuzu has pled not guilty. Lisa Lacera, Fox News.
The FBI says it's uncovered a theft ring in Washington state that sold millions of dollars worth of stolen goods on Amazon.com over the past 6 years. Federal court documents show 2 Amazon contract drivers were involved and that 2 storefronts posing as pawn shops bought the goods from shoplifters, shipped them to Amazon warehouses, and then sold them online. No comment yet from Amazon. The NFL preseason officially gets underway after yesterday's Pro Football Hall of Fame game.
The Denver Broncos come away with a late victory in Canton. Can't get a first down without getting the touchdown. And Rippon to the end zone again, and it's going to be deflected and caught for the touchdown.
Al Michaels there on NBC. Brett Rippon's 4th down pass is caught after the tip by Jawan Winfrey to put Denver back on top after the 2-minute warning as they come away winners of the Pro Football Hall of Fame game over the Atlanta Falcons 14-10. The Hall of Fame game also brought the first coach's challenge for a pass interference call following the new rule instituted this offseason. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And TSA agents seize a rocket launcher in Baltimore the second time this week. Agents grabbed the military equipment yesterday at Baltimore Washington International Airport after it was brought back on a military flight by a U.S. Air Force sergeant who wanted to keep it as a keepsake. This is Fox News.
Hi, welcome to this Subway ad for the new Ciabatta collection. How do you want it?
I'll take the slam poultry.
Sure. Italian ciabatta with mozzarella. When hunger reigns, you're my favorite umbrella. Tasty garlic steak and provolone. With you, my taste buds are never alone. Savory chicken pesto, you have my affection. For you complete the ciabatta collection. Thank you. That was the new ciabatta collection by Subway. Limited time only at participating restaurants.
We understand what matters to you because at Docomo Pacific, we're a family too. With the Now Family program, mom, dad, and kids stay connected on the latest devices the whole family can enjoy. For just $155 a month, get 3 lines with 30 gigs of 4G LTE data each, and endless use of your favorite apps without affecting your monthly data bucket. Add more, get more, save more. Docomo Pacific, better together. Some conditions apply.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So here we are again, the continuing saga of Major General Esther Agagi. So you remember the name of the program here is Tall Tales. So during the break, I went out and did some interviews myself. I interviewed the key players here, and this is the report that I can give you from my interview. The first person I interviewed was Esther Agagi. And I said, you know, Esther, it looks like you were the person that generated the request for personnel action that resulted in the lieutenant governor giving you a gigantic raise. What do you have to say about that? Agagi said, I can't talk about it. It's a personnel matter. So then I went from there and I found the quartermaster, Laura Lee Chrysostomo. And I said, Laura Lee, why did you sign off on that request for personnel action? Didn't you think it was, strange that the adjutant general would be asking for so much money when she's so new on the job? Here's what Laura Lee told me. I was only following orders.
I see nothing.
I see nothing. I hear nothing. I know nothing, Mr. Klitzkie.
Nice.
Yeah. So then let's see. I went from there to the lieutenant governor, and I said, Lieutenant Governor, this whole thing looks like something you cooked up with Esther Agagi to give her a really large raise and perhaps slip it under the radar so that nobody noticed. What do you have to say about that? Yeah, well, I have the authority to do it, and if you don't like it, you can run for governor yourself.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah,
He's been known to say things like that.
That's kind of a Josh report. And then I finally found the governor herself, Lilian Guerrero. And I said, Governor, this whole thing makes your administration look really, really bad. What do you say about that? I'm going to go into my office and shut the door. I don't like all the pressure out here. And besides, this whole thing was just blown out of proportion.
Now we should move on.
Yeah. So that's what I was doing where you guys were all enjoying that big halftime show. I was running around doing those interviews.
I was wondering about the beads of sweat on your forehead.
Yeah,
so that explains it.
When I have to, for an old guy, I can move pretty quickly. So And let's see, I've got a Christian on the line. Good deal. I just had one more thing to say about this. Yeah, I'll get to it after I talk with. Good afternoon, Christian.
Hey, Bob. Great show.
Thank you.
One question I had, or what I was thinking, is that her former pay, around $80,000, was in line with her rank as lieutenant colonel, and then she was quite a promotion, but she got promotion to two-star general, so that pay increase was in line with that. So I was hoping you could kind of talk about, her pay as a two-star general versus a director of an office for the government.
Okay, well, this is complicated because she has two capacities. She's in the National Guard, and she's an employee of the government of Guam. So her pay of about $81,000 was a government of Guam pay as the Director of Military Affairs or the Adjutant General. She is a drill status guardsman, which means that she works full-time for the government of Guam, and she drills on weekends and 15 days, etc. So she didn't go from lieutenant colonel to adjutant general as far as that salary was concerned. Her salary as a lieutenant colonel was a military salary. So it's a little complicated as to, the fact that she had to end her full-time job with the National Guard and go to work for the government of Guam in order to be the adjutant general. So the pay rate...
Oh, okay, so she's not a full-time two-star general.
Not now she isn't, no. The adjutant general must be a drill status guardsman.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, thanks, Bob. Honored.
Thank you, Christian. So, now I listed this on the card as the Ethics Commission versus Major General Agagi. And the only reason I did that was that perhaps the card should be larger, because if we examine who did what against or through a lens of ethicality, let's see if we could find anyone who did anything unethical. Well, if the finances were there and the papers were in order, and Josh signed the papers, and he didn't disobey, he didn't contramand an order of the governor, then he didn't do anything unethical.
Right.
And if the same holds true for Esther Agagi, she didn't do anything unethical.
Right.
And the same holds true for the quartermaster. Now, when people start spinning stories as to why these things were happening, that gets you into ethical territory.
I see.
Yeah. If as an example, if Janella, when the first Janella gets a phone call, what about this raise? And she goes to the lieutenant governor, and he says, well, just tell him that, it was to get her salary in line with the other directors. And then the next day she's got to change her story. Somewhere along the lines there, you're starting to get on thin ethical ice, because you're getting close to something that looks like a cover-up. And I have a feeling that we haven't seen even the end of those attempts yet, because the latest, as you mentioned, is we're not going to talk about this anymore. So what's going to happen when people start foying the lieutenant governor, the quartermaster, the adjutant general with some really sharp questions? And what's going to happen when reporters who are traipsing around with microphones stick those microphones in the face of, say, the governor or the lieutenant governor? Are they just going to stonewall? Interesting question.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So looking at this through the retrospectoscope, the governor would have been better off not having embarked on this course at all. But having done so and having gotten caught, it would have been better to just come forward when it happened and fess up. Now, of course, now we just have to guess, why was this done? Obviously, it wasn't a mistake. one of the stories was, well, some thought was given to whether or not the tag should get a raise. So a proposal was sent along, and somebody acted on the proposal as though it were the real thing. This thing with the lieutenant governor's signature on it. That was just a proposal. So it gets really deep, and that's where the ethical dimension comes into all of these things. Now, I don't know if there's unethical conduct or not, but I'm not in the ethics committee either. I'm a talk radio host, and I look at these things, and I draw such inferences as the facts present. And it's the Ethics Commission's job to grab a hold of those facts, which are available to anybody, and see where they go. Now, the Ethics Commission's been confirmed for about 3 weeks. That's the last I heard of them. Although I think this is the fourth potential issue they should be looking at. They should be looking at 3 senators going to Taiwan on Taiwan's nickel. They should be looking at a Supreme Court decision that repeats findings from the Superior Court saying that Mary Torres entered into an illegal conspiracy when she was the general manager of the port. There's this one, and there's one more that escapes my voluminous memory momentarily, but I'm sure it'll pop back in my head. So if we're going to have an ethics commission, this is the kind of stuff they're supposed to be doing, not waiting around for somebody to come along and tell them what to do. As it is right now, we don't have an email address, we don't have a telephone, etc. The only thing we have is the definite possibility that when it comes time to run for re-election, the governor will be able to say, no governor ever appointed members to the Ethics Commission, but I did. They didn't do squat, but I appointed them, by gosh. Okay, so this is the same Esther Agagi, by the way, who ran afoul of the military pay system when she was off to the War College and received a housing allowance that was far larger than the one she should have received. Got a letter of reprimand from the TAG at the time, which the administration is really kind of, oh, well, that was kind of like a note from your mother or something. It wasn't really very important at all.
Just a misunderstanding.
Just a misunderstanding, yeah. And she's okay. She didn't mean it, so it's all right. And it's the same Esther Agagi when one of her guardsmen, a guy named Jerry Guerrero, was arrested at the National Guard headquarters, gave this statement to the press. There is no tolerance for depraved conduct such as the sexual exploitation of minors in the Guam National Guard. We will continue to work closely with law enforcement to root out predators and protect the island's youth. A really good virtue signaling statement, right? But then her own spokesman, a Major Josephine Bloss, when a follow-up was made, said this: a person is innocent until proved guilty, and the local case has not been resolved, so Guerrero remained employed with the Guard. And then a second follow-up from KUAM came up with this gem. Even today, Guerrero maintains his employment. Major Bloss said the Guard stands strongly by his innocence until proven guilty. So, that's such a convenient, it's almost in the same league as, it's a personnel matter.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for innocence until proven guilty, but I think he should be taken off duty and, put on,
Yeah, well, innocence until proven guilty begins when a criminal trial starts. Mm-hmm. And it's the prosecution's burden to go forward, and the burden of proof is on the prosecution. And the defense doesn't have to do anything. If, at the end of the prosecution's case, if they have not proved all of the elements of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt, the defense is entitled to a directed verdict.
Right.
That's what innocent until proven guilty means. But if you're out on the street corner with a package of heroin stuck behind your ear and a cop sees you and arrests you, there's no innocent until proven guilty. You're arrested. You're taken to the pokey.
Yeah.
You're tossed in the pokey, and you'll stay there for maybe as long as 2 days until you're taken before a magistrate. The magistrate then will concern himself with two things. One, was there probable cause for the arrest? And the second, should this person be released pending further proceedings? And the touchstone there is, will he return for trial? And is he a danger to the community? It's not innocent until proven guilty. The next thing that usually happens is an indictment by a grand jury. The only people in the grand jury is the prosecutor and the prosecutor's witness. The defendant's even there. No innocent until proven guilty. So it's only when you get down to the criminal trial that starts. And I've given this example on more than one occasion. Let's say, Michael, that you and I are in, let's say we're in the bar business, okay?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And we have a nighttime bartender. We got really good cash control. We got a point-of-sale cash register. But every night we wind up $20 short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned that to one of the regular customers, and he said, well, I tell you why you're $20 short. I see your bartender sticking $20 in her pocket every night. Excuse me, $20 in their pocket every night before they leave. Why don't you fire them? And I can't understand. I'm just shocked that anyone would say such a thing. How could I possibly fire them because they're innocent until proven guilty? That's the same mindset here. It's a nice sounding phrase if you understand what it means, but it really contrasts so well with there's no tolerance for depraved conduct such as the sexual exploitation of minors in the Guam National Guard. We'll keep them on the job, though. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a feeling that Adjutant General, Major General Agagi's name is going to achieve a rather prominent place in the newspaper from now on. Talking about self-serving statements, here's a statement that came out on August 1. A proposal, this is from Janella, a proposal was received by administration to consider an increase in the Adjutant General's salary as the Director of Military Affairs. A draft personnel action form submitted for the administration's review was inadvertently processed. Once the error was identified, a review was conducted and steps are now being identified to ensure this error is not repeated. The pay adjustment was not sanctioned by the administration. This was an error in systems we have since corrected. The Adjutant General's salary corrected the adjutants and are making adjustments to ensure that the necessary controls are in place. And then here's a statement from Major Agagi. I know the soldiers in the Guam Army National Guard, the governor and lieutenant governor, and the people of Guam have placed confidence in my ability to lead. I take these responsibilities seriously and want to assure everyone that I will work to maintain the expectations that come with my position. Really good at virtue signaling, isn't she?
Right. That's, sounded nice.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the next item on the card. This is the CCU versus Gura. Yeah, the next bout, CCU versus Gura. And this is a story that ran in the Post, of all places. It's a John O'Connor story. Dismissal in Gura case hinges on selective prosecution. And John Illo, one of the defendants in the Gura criminal case, has alleged selective prosecution on the part of the Attorney General in prosecuting him and other people from the Gura Board of Commissioners, and not other government agencies that have also broken the open government law. And guess which agency it is that Illo is hanging his hat on? The Consolidated Commission on Utilities. And the story says, referring to the CCU, Rosano stated in his dismissal motion that at least one, and potentially many government of Guam boards that have conducted polling similar to the ones alleged against Mr. Illo and the other Gura members. Citing the Guam Daily Post's articles on the CCU's use of a poll vote to declare a holiday, Rosano states that CCU Commissioner Simon Sanchez admitted that the commission conducts routine polling. However, Sanchez also stated that CCU attorneys indicated poll voting is legally allowed. As of today, there is no prosecution against the CCU. The only difference between the CCU and Illo is the body they serve, Rosano said. Therefore, no legitimate facts support any distinction in prosecuting Mr. Illo and not the CCU members. So CCU has made quite a name for itself as far as the open government law is concerned under the leadership of its chairman, Joey Duenas. So this is an interesting motion, dismissing it for selective prosecution. Now, I'm going to lay odds here that the motion will not be successful, because the selective prosecution has to stem from some impermissible category, like race or sex. And the most famous selective prosecution case, one that everybody remembers from his constitutional law class in law school, is a case called Yick Wo versus Hopkins, where the Supreme Court found that San Francisco authorities selectively enforced zoning ordinances against resident Chinese, but almost never against whites. Although facially neutral, the court found that the San Francisco ordinances were enforced on a discriminatory basis, relying on the statistical disparity between Chinese and non-Chinese applicants for guess what kind of business, Michael?
Wow. Bar?
Laundry.
Okay. I should have known.
Yeah. In fact, wooden laundry. So that element just isn't here. It's not. It doesn't. Once again, it doesn't put the CCU in a very favorable light with respect to, being a sort of a test case. Well, look, these guys did it, and nobody prosecuted them. And then the article goes on to point out that when the salary increases were done in executive session, the Attorney General said it was wrong, but he never prosecuted anybody. So, an interesting point. Well, New Year's Eve came up awfully quick.
It really did. Yeah. Faster than we thought.
Yeah. Well, let's just do the seventh inning stretch instead of shooting off the fireworks and getting out the noisemakers, etc.
Yeah,
okay.
Scare everybody in the building.
Yeah.
Hey, do you know what time the bank closes? I need to deposit my check.
You know you can do that from your phone.
I can?
With Bank of Guam's mobile app, it's easy. Just endorse the back and snap a pic to deposit it into your account. You can do this from anywhere, anytime, which means no rushing to catch the bank and no lines.
With Bank of Guam's mobile app and online banking, we're always open.
Visit bankofguam.com for more information. Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. Member FDIC.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, inviting you to try their garlic roasted Dungeness crab, featuring 2 pounds of Dungeness crab marinated with a secret garlic sauce and served with special chow mein noodles. Visit Mezcla in Hagatna and now in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
Center field bleachers, Wrigley Field, Chicago. Another successful 7th inning stretch for all you folks out there in our international radio listening audience. I haven't seen Lady D participating in the 7th inning stretch lately. Are you still at the ballpark, Lady D? Okay, let's go on then. Let's stick with the administration for a little while longer. The next item on the card here is Governor Lou Leon Guerrero versus the travel regs. And Governor Lou Leon Guerrero is defending her decision to authorize business class travel for former 2-term Governor Carl Gutierrez, who is now her chief advisor for economic development, etc. Lou said, providing him with a business class opportunity, I think, is minuscule compared to what he's done for the people. And then the governor said Gutierrez is making frequent long-distance trips. And Gutierrez himself said, I'm telling you, it's not easy. He told the Post in a phone interview Wednesday when asked about his business class travel. He said, I'm 78 years old. A mere child at 78.
That's coming from you, Bob.
And then and another story here. That was a Post story, and I got a Daily News story here. In response to our story, the administration sent the following comment. Pursuant to the governor's authority and the Department of Administration's travel and transportation policy, the governor granted an exception to former Governor Gutierrez as a courtesy for his tenure and service as a former governor. So, once again, what I want to see, I sometimes think I'm the only one, I'd like to see an effective, efficient government that provides basic services in accordance with the rule of law on at least a break-even basis. Courtesy is something that we should all remember, but we should do it with our own nickel, right? We shouldn't salute with somebody else's hat.
Yeah, that's not cool.
Yeah, that really isn't a courtesy at all. That's something else. Ironically, I looked at the travel regulations, and the travel regulations were apparently amended on, let's see, February 27th of this year, and to read that all individuals traveling abroad, etc., with the exception of the governor and lieutenant governor and those whose requests are given explicit approval by the governor, are supposed to travel tourist class. So this just came on the books at the end of February.
Wow, not so long ago.
Yeah, I think this may just be another coincidence.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
nothing to that.
and I suspect if we looked long enough, we'll find Laura Lee Chrysostomo in here somewhere.
Probably, yeah.
Preparing the new regulation, right? So again, there are reasons perhaps to allow some government employees to travel first class when they're on government business, but as a courtesy for long years of service, that doesn't fit into my idea of what good government is all about. However, once again, the poet laureate of Tall Tales comes to the front of the class, and this is what the poet laureate said: "Our beloved Carl T.C. is just the same as you and me, but he's 78. Should he fly in a crate? He needs first-class service for free."
Oh, nice. Wow.
That's the poet laureate of Tall Tales.
Yeah, he has some serious wordsmithing going on.
He does. And here's another one. "He who flies all the time in a plane on the taxpayer's dime should try to be frugal, and gain public approval. Doing less would sure be a crime."
That's pretty good.
Leave it to Andrew, the poet laureate of Tall Tales. So then, from there, see if I can keep my papers all straight here. From there, we go to another case of courtesy. And this is billed on the card as Tina versus the Guam Police Department. Tina being Speaker Tina Rose Munya Barnes, occasionally known as Acting Lieutenant Governor Tina Rose Munya Barnes.
Yes.
On at least 2 occasions in recent weeks when Speaker Tina Munya Barnes served as acting lieutenant governor, she was accompanied by a Guam Police Department officer who provided security for her. GPD spokesman Sergeant Paul Tapau said this was not an executive security detail. Well, Sergeant Paul Tapau, I'll give you a little vocabulary advice. You could call it a hippopotamus, and it wouldn't make any difference. It's what it does that counts. Officer Tapau goes on to say security is not afforded to the acting lieutenant governor. He said in response to questions from the Post, it is only provided to the elected governor and lieutenant governor. However, he acknowledged that should a circumstance call for a detail of security to another public official, then the Guam Police Department will provide it. One such circumstance occurred this Tuesday when U.S. Secretary of Veterans Affairs Robert Wilkie arrived on island for a one-day visit. Governor Leon Guerrero had not yet returned from the inauguration ceremony for President David Panuelo of the Federated States. Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio became acting governor, signing pay raises for... I wonder if that's when it was. Lieutenant Governor Barnes filled in as acting lieutenant governor. Tapau said security was provided to the acting lieutenant governor to allow both the acting governor and acting lieutenant governor to travel from location to location during Secretary Wilkie's visit.
Yeah.
Apparently this could not be done except in a police car.
Yeah.
When contacted for comment, Barnes issued the following statement. Given the demands on Tuesday as acting lieutenant governor and Secretary Wilkie's visit, executive security stepped up to assist with the demand of the job. Barnes stated, "I am grateful for the hard work of Guam's finest helping me fulfill the obligations of the job and the people of Guam for giving me this chance to be their public servant." I wonder if Esther Agee writes Barnes's public statements. They seem to have a familiar ring.
A lot of that, a lot of that nice talk.
A lot of virtue signaling and a distraction from the point. And we have Governor spokeswoman Janela Carrera said she is aware of only one other occasion when a security officer was assigned to the speaker. That occurred in early July when Barnes was acting lieutenant governor and traveling to multiple locations with various people around the island. Carrera said it is GPD that makes the decision on whether security is necessary, not the governor's office. Yeah, well, I'm just not persuaded by any of this stuff, you know. It's just a perk. It's a way to feel really important, you know, to have a police officer drive you around. And when the governor is gone, first of all, we don't even need a lieutenant governor in the 21st century. But when the governor's gone, then the lieutenant governor becomes acting governor. And there's absolutely nothing for the speaker to do as acting lieutenant governor. There's nothing for the lieutenant governor to do when the governor's in town, except...
In most cases, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, his only duty under the Organic Act is he's the keeper of the Guam seal. So there's nothing for Barnes to do whatsoever. She doesn't even need to come over to the governor's office. She could stay home and watch TV, and it wouldn't make any difference. So this play acting here with the police escort is exactly that, just play acting.
Right, yeah.
And once again, an effective, efficient government that provides basic services in accordance with the rule of law on at least a break-even basis. Here we're having town meetings almost every night to deal with the violence in our community. One of the themes that always comes up is we don't have enough cops on the street. So instead of having a cop on the street doing police work, we've converted a cop, a regular armed police officer, into a chauffeur.
Yeah, a cabbie.
Yeah, for Tina Rose Munya Barnes.
A lorry driver.
A lorry. Yes, well, it's quite so, a lorry driver.
It's a jolly good job if you can get it.
Yes, yes. Back in, you know, there was a time when the lorries were all horse-driven, but no longer.
No.
Yeah.
You've got to have somebody steer the wheel.
All right. So, so much for Tina Rose Munya Barnes. Then we turn to the legislative branch, and this is the legislature versus transparency. The legislature's Committee on Ethics and Standards has convened to address an ethics complaint, but the details, including who filed it and the issue raised, is being kept tightly under grips. Joe San Augustine is the chairman. The senator would only say the committee met and another meeting is expected, quote, soon. Several senators are off island and are returning over the next few days or so. Right now, I'm trying to confirm the attendance of members of the committee so we can meet and discuss this ethics complaint. Well, that's going to be a pretty tall order, trying to figure out when senators are actually on Guam.
Yeah, and besides, we're only allowed to fill tall orders here.
Exactly. Yeah. So obviously you can't call the committee to order because the senators are off island, probably meeting somewhere to determine what arguments they should advance in opposition to the request for a part-time legislature. The Post has learned that at least some members of the legislature have received letters from the committee as the complaint apparently wasn't filed against any specific individual. Vice Chairman and Senator Will Castro said the rules don't allow the committee to discuss the complaint. What's the story about then? They're not supposed to discuss the complaint.
Well,
according to the 35th Guam Legislature Standing Rules, the committee leadership is a shared responsibility among sitting senators. The Committee on Ethics and Standards is authorized to investigate alleged violation of the Code of Ethics and Standards committed by a senator or an employee during their employment with the legislature. I've also got a PDN story here that picks up on the same thing. And it says the current 6-member committee, which serves on a rotating basis, is comprised of Senator Joe San Augustine, Chairman, Senator Will Castro, Vice Chairman, Speaker Tina Munya Barnes, Senator Therese Terlahi, Senator Mary Torres, and Senator Amanda Shelton. So my first question is, if you're not supposed to be talking about complaints, then why this story? And then my second question is, if you're going to do this, you can't be so indefinite as to say, well, yeah, we're going to have another meeting, but we don't know when it's going to be. I think the public is looking for sort of a disciplined approach to this.
You would think, I mean, it is government, after all.
Yeah. So you didn't win. You didn't win any kudos on this one, Joe San Augustine. Okay, then I've got the United States versus the Chamorro Land Trust Act. And this is a story that appeared in today's paper, Daily News. The federal government's legal challenge of the Chamorro Land Trust could be resolved through a settlement, according to Special Attorney General Mike Phillips, who said he's optimistic that will happen. Phillips said the terms of the proposed settlement are confidential, probably a personnel matter.
More than likely, yeah.
But said he doesn't foresee any major changes in the land trust as a result of the proposal. The federal government in September 2017 sued the government of Guam and the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, stating the Chamorro Land Trust Act violates the Fair Housing Act. The land trust holds public land for the benefit of the island's indigenous Chamorros. Now, I wonder if there are any kind of Chamorros other than indigenous Chamorros.
Yeah, that would be an interesting
question. Yeah. Who are allowed to apply for long-term residential and agricultural leases at $1 a year. The Land Trust Act defines a native Chamorro as anyone who became a citizen as a result of the Organic Act and their descendants. That is intentional racial discrimination, according to the federal government, because 96.8% of those who meet the definitions are racially Chamorro. The Fair Housing Act prohibits racial discrimination in the leasing or sale of dwellings. According to the records of the United States District Court of Guam, the federal government has offered a settlement in the case, and Guam has until August 26 to respond. I believe it's very positive, and I'm very hopeful there will be a resolution, Phillips said. I'm very optimistic with the way things are going. Although Phillips couldn't comment on the specifics of the settlement, District Judge Susan Oki Mulway last December ruled Guam can't be required to pay monetary damages in connection with the case. If there's no settlement, the case is scheduled for a bench trial in April 2020. Former Attorney General Elizabeth Anderson appointed Phillips as a special attorney general so he could serve as lead counsel in the case defending the land trust. Phillips, along with attorneys Therese Terlahi and Michael Berdallo, represented Santos in a 1992 suit against then-Governor Joseph Added to force the government to implement the Land Trust Act, which was created by local law in 1975. The Federal Appeals Court this week issued its opinion in a separate lawsuit which accused GovGuam of racial discrimination with respect to voting rights. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit upheld a judgment in the lawsuit filed by Jigo resident Dave Davis, who sued after he was denied ability to register to vote. The plebiscite law includes an impermissible racial classification that violates rights guaranteed by the 15th Amendment, judges stated. According to judges, the native inhabitants of Guam voter eligibility restriction so closely paralleled a racial classification as to be a proxy for race. Phillips said the opinion won't impact the land trust case, even though the plebiscite law and the Chamorro Land Trust Act use the same definitions for eligibility to gain U.S. citizenship because of the Organic Act. Although the same group of people is involved in the two cases, Phillips said the Ninth Circuit made it clear that its opinion in the plebiscite case was limited to the question of federally protected voting rights and not to other issues. The cases involve very different questions and analysis, Phillips said. Well, you'll recall that when I went through a quick workup on the Davis case, I pointed out that there were two sentences in the Davis case that would give some hope to those who were hoping that the Chamorro Land Trust Act would pass constitutional muster. And those two sentences referenced the district court judge, whose name I just mentioned, determination that the Chamorro Land Trust Act was to provide a remedy to people whose land was taken by the U.S. government after World War II, which I thought at the time was completely bogus. If you read the act, if you read any of this discussion that took place in 1975 at the time of the act, no one ever said boo about land takings and that sort of dimension. But apparently the district judge bought it. So that would provide some hope. When the offer was first made, my suggestion to those who were interested was probably ought to sit down and see if you could work something out with the United States Attorney, because you might at least be able to shelter those leases that have already been let, even if the statute was unconstitutional. But my analysis at the time was if you go for the whole thing, you could lose the whole thing, and those people that have leases might find themselves stripped of those leases because the unconstitutionality of the statute. But it's interesting that Phillips is the Special Attorney General for the governor of Guam. Phillips has had a part in this for a long, long time. He's a really sharp dude. He's a very good lawyer. And when he says that he's optimistic that there could be a settlement, I would take that very seriously. So, as usual, we'll be watching that for you like a hawk.
Weekday shopping just got exciting. Join the Agania Shopping Center's Shop and Win on Weekdays promo. Shop or dine at any ASC store or restaurant on weekdays from now till October 31st. Show your receipt at the ASC booth and win instantly. Every $20 spent gets you an entry form to win big at the monthly draws, including round-trip tickets to Manila, $500 ASC gift certificates, and more. See posters and print ads for more. Special thanks to Sky Zone, Fundamental Riders, Vince Jewelers, and Wendy's.
Parents, start your child's school year right with healthiness and fun. Complete your child's immunizations, annual physical, dental, or eye exam at FHP and receive a free gift for each exam visit. Perfect for back to school. Valid from July 15 to August 31st or while supplies last. Visit their website or Facebook page for more details. Call 646-5825 and press 2 to schedule an appointment today. Most private insurance accepted. FHP Health Center, our island, your clinic.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Home stretch. Call to the post at Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky, home of the historic Kentucky Derby. And we are entering the home stretch of Tall Tales. Well, that means I've got about 5 minutes to wrap up another exciting, informational, insightful program here on Tall Tales. Have no fear, though. I'll be back on Monday. And I thought maybe I'll just take a minute here to kind of glance at some of the Facebook posts. Starting out here, Nate horns in and says, Josh seems to love spending our money between Festback and now the raise. What's next? Well, I got a feeling that if I said that to him, Nate, he'd say, well, you know, if you don't like it, you could run for governor. That seems to be Josh's line.
Yeah, that's his advice.
Yeah. And Jose Martinez asks, when a senator is off island, is there an acting senator? Actually, even when they're on island, we have 15 acting senators.
I was just about to say.
Yeah, they're all acting like they're senators. But the roar of grease paint, the smell of the crowd, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So there is an interesting question there, and that is this. When Tina Rose Munoz Barnes becomes the acting lieutenant governor and is chauffeured around by a cop, can she also be the speaker of the legislature?
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And my analysis is probably not.
Yeah. And then who's next in line?
The vice speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, Talina Nelson.
Yeah, Talina Nelson.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah. Now, there have been times when the speaker had their own automobile.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose in that case, then the lieutenant governor could drive around in their automobile.
Yeah, imagine that.
Now, these things are really important. The perks of office, far more important than the duties and responsibilities.
Of course, of course.
And let's see who else chimed in here on Facebook. And Nate horns in again. Due to the demands of the lieutenant governor, what are the duties again, besides spending our money? And the only duty specified in the Organic Act for the lieutenant governor is the lieutenant governor is the keeper of the Guam seal.
Yeah. Where does he keep it?
An interesting question, but I don't think that you could get an answer to that question. You know why?
Yeah.
Personnel matter.
Probably so.
Yeah. And Ishmael Velez says 2 separate police details for the same event because they had to travel in police vehicles. Could have borrowed a DEPCOR vehicle and called it a day. Or could have driven their own cars and called it a day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I gave a speech last summer at the Chamber of Commerce called, I'm not running for governor, but if I were. I told some of the things I do. First thing I do would be to ask Congress to abolish the position of lieutenant governor.
Yeah.
Because it's John Nance Garner, who was FDR's vice president for his first 2 terms. John Nance Garner said the office of vice president of the United States is about as useful as a bucket of warm piss.
Not very useful.
John Nance Garner was from Texas, so
yeah, we kind of tell it like it is.
Yeah, you know, it scraped the paint and varnish off it. And I would say the same thing for lieutenant governor. Back in the days when it took so long to get here, etc., no phone communication like we have now. But anyhow, that would be my advice. My advice to myself and to the legendary Michael Knight is, Michael, I'm listening to the plaintive strains of Ravel's Bolero.
Mm-hmm.
Let's call it a day.
Let's do that, Brother Bob. Have a great weekend.
All right, we'll see you on Monday.
Yes, sir.
Adios, todo samzu.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3. and 104.3 HD3.
Ramping up trade pressures. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. President Trump escalates the trade dispute with China by announcing he's going to impose more tariffs to essentially cover all Chinese imports.
I think President Xi, who's somebody I like a lot, I think he wants to make a deal, but